Let us give thanks, let us count our blessings, and let us continue to list our gratitude. Today we are concluding our sermon series on ThanksGivings, in which we are encouraged once again to live out the greatest commandment, to love God with all of our heart, mind, and souls, and to love our neighbors as equally as we love ourselves. And that over the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about how sometimes we struggle to be grateful, and yet we are called to be grateful nonetheless. And that when we enter into the mindset to be grateful for all that we have and don't have, that the Lord helps us to be centered in His will. And that then we are encouraged and inspired to go forth and express that thanksgiving to others and in love and service to the Lord. So today we will explore how the Lord encourages us to move forward with faith, hope, and love. And at times we should look back and reflect upon the stories of those who struggled and yet still celebrated life and God's blessings. So we reflect on the first Thanksgiving, which was a harvest celebration held by the Pilgrims of Plymouth Colony in the 17th century. And there are many myths about this first Thanksgiving, but we do have two eyewitnesses' accounts of stories of what actually happened, or at least as best as we can see. One is from William Bradford's journal titled Plymouth Plantation, and then the other is Mort's Relations by Edward Winslow. So what we know from the first Thanksgiving was that it was a feast to celebrate the first successful harvest for all of those who had settled in the area. And so a harvest, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, is that celebration of the first fruits or whatever crop had been gathered, and that if it was a bountiful blessing, they celebrated more abundantly. And we continue to celebrate this same celebration when we give our tithes and our offerings. And our tithes is actually taken from the Bible, where it's a 10% of what we make and give back to God and His mission. And so we continue to celebrate the first Thanksgiving, and we continue to celebrate the harvest in the biblical tradition. And we know that the Pilgrims who settled in America, they had this first Thanksgiving because they had survived that long sea journey on the Mayflower. And there were actually several voyages of people who came over, but that one is the most famous. And it sailed across the Atlantic Ocean and landed at Plymouth Rock, Massachusetts. And there were 102 Christians who made that journey, but only half of them survived the trip. And I remember my great-great-grandmother used to tell me that we were descendants of that ship. And then I looked and I couldn't find our name. That might be something that many people claim to. There was only 50 people on it or who survived it, and yet so many people were like, we were there. So we know that half perished due to starvation and disease. And so we know that the good harvest was a great reason to celebrate. It meant that they would have enough food and provisions to survive the winter. So it was extremely important to have a good harvest so that during those cold times and maybe the brutalness of the winter, they would be able to survive and eat.